I guess.
Yeah, just trying to
What
get the
is going to be
material.
yeah, what is going to be unique about the China ElectroState Energy Service, and what are you going to be looking at?
So in China, we have a saying about the energy industry, which is "fu mei pin you shao qi," which means lots of coal, piño, a little bit of oil, and then not much natural gas. And what that means is the the energy transition to the to electrification of many applications, and really to the overall electrostate is that's in China. That's a matter not just of the environment, but also of what they see as energy security. So whereas, say, in the U.S., I have my other office in Houston, right? In the U.S., electrification is seen as a nice to have, but in
Mm,
China, it's a must have because the U.S. has very cheap natural gas. So in China, the what makes the emergence of the electrostate in China so interesting is that it's really being pushed forward at all levels of government, and it's about energy security and environmentalism. So those go together. And ultimately, China wants to decrease its imports of fuels from overseas and focus on domestic production of energy. I think that what really where China's struggling now is creating the markets for these new renewable energy industries. Things like widespread curtailment of wind and solar, that really peaked in 2017.
mhm.
But uh, the even though China is rolling out many nuclear power plants, there's still a very heavy dependence on coal. Even all these anti-coal policies, even after these go into effect, coal consumption in China for the past decade was still increasing at 1% a year.
Mhm.
So it's still increasing despite it's increasing very stubbornly. So this is why in China there's such a big interest in CCS technologies, renewables, and really anything that can be energy that can be produced domestically.
And do you think the new nukes are going to be knocking coal out of the system? And have they got a plan for the energy mix as they head towards their predicted net zero, which I think is 2060?
Right. So, referring to the double carbon goals, carbon peak 2030, carbon neutral 2060. So, no, the new nuclear capacity is unlikely to displace coal. Instead, it is meeting the additional grid demand. So, demand is increasing, capacity is increasing, and coal is staying steady or even increasing. And now, something interesting that I really didn't know until I spent a lot of time with these factories, and I'm thinking mostly in really, I'm thinking of Jiangyin, which is an area near Wuxi and Suzhou, right? So I was in Jiangyin. That's a big concentration of the chlor-alkali industry. I was talking to these factory owners, and they said, we often have our own power plants, captive power plants behind the meter, and we call this 自产自销, which means you make it yourself and you use it yourself, right? So it's all internal. And these power plants uh, they are legacy technologies, coal power plants. They're small, which means they're inefficient.
Mm.
And because they are captive within the same industrial park, regulation is often very light, which means they can be quite polluting. So really, the problem with power generation is, and this sounds crazy for China, an area with a very strong central government, but the problem with power generation is lack of centralization. Many of
Ah.
these factories have their own captive production. And again, like the example with these guys I spoke to in Jiangyin, that's the problem they have. This problem has appeared earlier. In Shandong province in the northeast, there is a cottage industry for chemical processing. A lot of small, loosely regulated chemicals factories. And that's, again, the government there wants to encourage these uh, to really come together into regional or even national champions. And this idea of creating conglomerates is really a trend across the entire Chinese economy. You see that with the automotive industry,
Right.
China trying, or with the airline industry. It used to be every province had their own airline, right? And you've still got way more airlines in China than you do in the US. In the US, you have three or four big ones, right? In China, you've got 15. You've got Shanghai Air, Sichuan Air, Henan Air, Guangzhou Air, something like that, right? So they're trying to do something similar with uh, the energy industry. And even though there are nominally only three grids, right? China Southern, China State Grid, and then Inner Mongolia East. Even though there are nominally three grids, the problem is uh, in this these distributed small scale generation facilities.
Yeah, I understand. It's going to be fascinating. Looking forward to listening and getting lots of great insight. So many thanks, Hack. Thanks a lot for taking the time out to chat to me today.